I don't know about you, but I've been meeting a ton of six, seven, even some eight-figure founders who are quite miserable. It's not everyone out there, but enough that if you've been around successful entrepreneurs for more than 5 minutes, you probably have a sense of what I'm talking about, right? From the outside, it looks like they have it all figured out. The business looks amazing, looks like it's working and making money. They have the clients, the revenue, the team, the brand. They have the famous testimonial wall. They have all the Stripe screenshots. Some have books. Others have these big YouTube channels, podcasts, the 2 Comma Club Award, right? And if you ask them how the business is going, they'll probably say something like, oh, it's good, it's busy, it's growing, a lot going on, which you may recognize as just entrepreneur code for this thing is actually eating my life. It's eating me alive. But I don't know how to say that without sounding ungrateful. And this is the thing that's being left out of conversations these days because it's not easy to talk about this, right? A lot of successful founders are not miserable because they failed. They're miserable because they actually succeeded into the wrong architecture. The problem isn't that the thing doesn't work or make money. Problem is it does. And that's what makes it a little confusing because if the business was completely fucked, if it was completely broken, the answer is pretty obvious, right? Fix it or shut it down. But for most people, the business is not broken. It makes money. It helps people. It has proof. It has momentum. Lots of sunk cost. There's a reputation. There's people depending on it. There's a whole identity built around it. And still, something underneath all that success, there is this fundamental level of dissonance that I think these entrepreneurs are feeling. And I've been there, so I get it. It's a sense of, this is great, but I don't want to scale this version of it. I don't want more of this. And the challenge with this is that it leaves them in this weird place where they both want to scale, they want to grow, they want to get to the next level, but they don't want more of this thing. And it's a really weird place because what do you do when the thing that you worked so hard to build is now actually the thing that you secretly want freedom from? What do you do when the business that was supposed to create freedom, be a source of joy, be a source of creativity, be a source of fun, actually becomes the primary thing that's consuming all those things? What do you do when the business is good enough to keep? You can keep it going, but it's not extraordinary enough to give the next decade or two of your life to. I call this the good business trap because a bad business is easy to leave, right? A bad business, pretty black and white. If it objectively doesn't work, there's no cognitive load, there's no emotional attachment to pivoting, doing something different, but it's not great, right? A great business doesn't just give you money, it gives you energy. And I think a good business is actually the most dangerous place that an entrepreneur can end up in because a good business makes just enough money to justify keeping it. It gives you just enough proof to keep optimizing. It gives you enough validation to ignore the parts of it that make you feel dead inside, right? It works just well enough to keep you trapped. And that's why I think a good business is the ultimate trap. And most people think that the thing to really worry about, the thing to avoid is failure. But I think having a good business is far worse, right? Good revenue, good clients, good reputation, good margins, good enough lifestyle, good enough proof. It's good enough, but it's not the business that actually makes you feel the most alive. It's not the business that actually sets your soul on fire. It's not the business that insanely turns you on. You feel like you're actually doing the thing that you were put on the planet to do, that you would do if you had $100 million in the bank, right? In that situation where you didn't need to do something to make money and you would actually allocate your time, your capacity, your energy in a way that actually lights you up, that would be the thing. It's the business that creates more freedom as it grows. It's the business that turns your deepest work into a scalable economic engine. It's the business that lets you get paid way more for becoming way more yourself and actually evolving into the next level version of you. And I think this is where a lot of people in that 6 to 7 figure range get stuck, because they're not looking for beginner tactics, right? They know how to make money. They know how to get clients. They know how to do the thing. They've been around the mastermind circuit enough to know that there are a few core ways to generate demand. There's a few core ways to actually sell the thing. There's a few core ways to deliver. They've figured out how to make money, right? But it still leaves this deeper question, which is this the business that I want to spend the next decade of my life scaling? Is this the business that I want to dedicate myself to? And for a lot of them, the answer is no. And most of these people, and I've had conversations in private, they wouldn't dare say this out loud. They wouldn't dare say this on their social channels. The thing is, if they actually admitted this, it would completely unravel them, right? This is a level of dissonance that creates so much discomfort that it would just fuck everything up, because it would mean admitting that the model that got them here is not the model that's going to get them to the most extraordinary version of not just their business, but their life. It would mean admitting that the offer that created the revenue may actually also be the offer that makes them feel kind of trapped doing things that they don't actually enjoy doing. It would mean admitting that the team that they built to create leverage may have actually created more complexity, eaten up all the margins, created more management debt, and actually robbed them of the time and freedom that they hired the team to create. It would mean admitting that the audience that they built may only know this highly curated, highly performed character that they portrayed that kind of keeps them in this box that they feel stuck in. It would mean admitting that the thing that the market rewards them for is no longer the thing that they feel the most alive to do, to offer. And unfortunately, that's a really terrifying realization. It's really terrifying to admit that the thing that you've externalized yourself around in the world was actually not something that you feel aligned with anymore. And instead of telling the truth, unfortunately, what most people try to do is they just optimize the machine more. So, okay, how do I throw more gas on this fire, right? How do I hire more people, build more systems, launch another offer, create another funnel, run more ads? Let me improve the sales process. Let me create more content. Let me improve delivery. Let me add AI and automation, right? And these things all sound like the responsible things to do. And some of these things help, but it's only going to work up until a certain point, because if the architecture is wrong, if the thing that you're selling, if what the business requires you to do, who it requires you to be, if all those things are misaligned, then optimization is just going to make the wrong thing more efficient. You just become better at operating the prison, right? You just make the cage more beautiful. You improve the lighting. You add some systems to the cage. You get some nice furniture. You hire people to help maintain the cage. You create a better onboarding sequence for the cage. You can call it scale, but you're still inside the fucking cage. And this is actually very confusing for most people, because they're doing all the right things. And maybe this is the pre-awareness level. They're doing all the right things, but the business actually still feels heavy. They're trying to grow this thing, but it doesn't seem to grow the way they want. And generally the answer is simple, right? The version of their business that they're actually trying to grow is not the business that they want. And it's generally not a question of a lack of effort. It's not a magic funnel. For most of these people, the business, and you may be in the situation, or maybe you know someone who is, the issue is that the business was designed from a level of consciousness that's no longer who the person is, right? There's a certain identity, there's a certain ambition, there's a certain amount of fear, certain amount of necessity, survival that no longer matches who the founder is becoming. So the founder is literally outgrowing the business because the business is a reflection of who they were, whether it's 2, 5, 10 years in the past. And the thing that felt really good at that point now feels like a cage. It feels like a prison. It feels like a liability. The model was built to get them here, right? But it's not going to get them to their next level. And for most people, the initial model, the architecture of the business, that even the offer on some level is often a survival mechanism, right? It's just, hey, let's find something that works. You sell what people are proven to pay money for. You serve the people who show up. You over deliver because you need proof. You take calls because you need the cash. You make yourself available because you want clients. You build around urgency because urgency gets the deal, right? You copy what works. You grab the model from the mastermind and that business coach because in the beginning you want certainty, right? You say yes because saying no actually feels very dangerous. And at that stage, it makes sense, right? In the beginning, you need reps, you need revenue. You need to just copy what works, right? Because you need the proof, you need the market feedback. You haven't done enough to know, like to develop that instinct. And you need to know that you can create value and get paid for it. But the model that you build in survival is actually not the model that's going to create sovereignty for you. The model that gets you out of chaos often contains the seed of the next level of chaos. For some, the sales call model that created cash becomes the thing that actually drains the living daylights out of them. The niche that helped the market understand you and put you in a box becomes too small for the work that you actually want to do. The same over delivery that made clients love you becomes absolutely unbearable. The level of access you were used to giving people that created intimacy at one point, at this point creates more captivity. The urgency that created momentum then becomes an addiction to pressure. The same audience that rewarded one version of you becomes the audience that you're now afraid to outgrow. So there's a phenomenon around this, and what I call it is a machine model. And this is how a business becomes a machine model, because the machine model is a business that's designed to produce money by extracting your life force. And this is what all the business gurus, all these sort of coaching programs and masterminds, that's what they're teaching, right? Because it produces the best testimonials and it produces short-term results. And most people who are trying to teach you a model that's going to get you growth, they're incentivized to optimize for short-term growth, not long-term sustainability. And it makes sense, because if they're charging you like $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, they want you to get a return really quick so you can give them even more money, right? It doesn't make sense for them to help you build a business that really fits you like a glove. Like in my language, a business that allows you to get paid to exist and fits you like what I call a bespoke custom fit suit made out of sweatpant material that's really comfortable, but kind of tailor-made for you, and that can flex and flow with you through seasons of life for decades to come. They don't really care about that, right? Because they fundamentally have different incentives and different interests. So when you build using the normal templates, you can build something that's profitable. You can build something that's impressive. You can build something that's sophisticated. You can build great systems. You can hire a team. You can build a great brand. But underneath all that, the model is still going to require you as the founder to keep feeding it with the energy, attention, performance, urgency, and just this nonstop effort and grind just to keep it running, let alone to make it grow. And that's why after a while, it starts feeling heavy. And after a while, you just start losing the enthusiasm and the passion and the desire to grow the thing because you're not scaling an asset. You're being metabolized by the machine, right? It feeds on you. And the signs of this are obvious, but most people, they don't realize what's happening. Revenue goes up, but your energy goes down. The business feels like it's growing, but as it grows, you feel less free. You feel more stuck. You feel more trapped. The team gets bigger, but your mental load just starts getting heavier. You're doing all the things, maybe at a higher level of skill and execution, but you're starting to get diminishing returns. So the things that used to work aren't working as well anymore. The calendar is full, but it doesn't generate the results that you want. And even though the business gets bigger, you have less and less space to think. You don't feel as creative. You don't feel excited. You don't feel the spark. You don't feel turned on and alive. It starts feeling like a job. And for me, a job is basically something you do for the money, right? And if the thing you're doing isn't the thing that you would normally want to be doing, if there wasn't like an outcome or a reward at the end, then it's basically a job, right? And it doesn't matter how much money it makes. For other people, it's like the clients are paying, right? And they're getting results, but the way you deliver, like your delivery model, takes way too much out of you and it just doesn't feel like it can scale. On the brand side, the audience maybe gets bigger, but you as the founder feel more and more trapped in playing this character, this persona that you've built, how you want people to perceive you. And the more people who buy into that, the more trapped you get because now you have to keep up this image. And you may have grown, you may have changed, but you still have to keep up the act. And that gets more dissonant and painful by the day. Or the offer sells, but you don't feel as turned on by it, right? You're just going through the motions. So in all these cases, the business may be objectively successful, but you as the founder, you feel less alive than you expected to feel by now. Like you literally thought that things would be different, right? And that last part is so annoying because, man, I speak to so many people and these are people that are really well known. They have really big brands. A lot of people look up to them, right? And they thought that the money at some point would create this aliveness that they've always wanted, right? They thought that they would get to a point where the business is big enough and they would actually feel the way that they wanted to feel. And for some, it's when I hit 500K a year. For others, it's 7 figures. For some, it's 8. They're like, oh, when I finally hit 7 figures, I'll finally feel safe. When I have the team, I'll finally feel free. When the business is stable, I'll finally relax. When I hit 100K on Instagram or YouTube, I'll finally feel proud. When the money is there, I'll finally be able to enjoy my life. And they get there and something still feels off because money can amplify the architecture of your life, but it can't redeem an architecture that's actually built against your nature. So if you build a business that goes against your nature, like who you are fundamentally, what you care about, what you desire, what turns you on, what lights you up, what you hate, no matter how successful it is, it'll never quite feel right because more money inside a dissonant model doesn't create freedom. It just creates a more profitable version of the same dissonance. It actually expands the dissonance. And this is one of the traps that I talk about a lot, which is, what are you scaling? Are you scaling dissonance? Are you scaling your problems? Because if you slightly hate your business at 6 figures, at 7, you're going to hate it a lot more. And at 8, it's going to be unbearable. Or are you scaling resonance? Because if you built it right from the get-go, and right is about so much more than the money. The money is the easy part. Making money is literally the easiest thing because like people have desires that they're spending money every single day to access. It's not rocket science to create a service that gives people what they want to buy, and then you can just fulfill that and you can make money. That's not the game that we're playing. That's level one of the game. You obviously want to generate enough cash flow to survive. But there's so many better ways to play this game where it's so much more than just the money. And so this whole phenomenon is why there are founders who are literally making millions of dollars a year who still feel trapped, right? They're not lacking money. What they're lacking is congruence. What they're lacking is a business that actually matches who they are deep down, that's built around what they actually want, that allows them to do the things that turn them on, and that honors the level that they're actually here to operate from. One of the worst things, if you're in this category, is having economic success without this existential alignment. And it's a very painful gap, because once your basic survival needs are handled, the game changes. And let's say you make enough money to handle your survival needs and to live a lavish lifestyle, you still have to wake up and do something you don't want to do. Because at lower levels, money solves very real problems, right? You got rent to pay, you want to have some runway, you want to have optionality, you want to have a sense of control. But after a certain point, more money isn't automatically going to solve the deeper problems. It's not going to solve the problem of having a business model that drains you. It's not going to solve a calendar that owns you. It doesn't solve the fact that you have a bunch of clients who you've outgrown, who you dread showing up to the call to, right? It doesn't solve a brand that reflects an old identity. It doesn't solve an offer that no longer carries the signal of your best work. It doesn't solve a nervous system that only knows how to grow through pressure and force. It doesn't solve the quiet grief of realizing that you built a business around a version of yourself that you no longer want to be. And that's why this misery is so quiet and insidious, right? Because on the outside, again, it looks like you're winning, right? And when you're winning on the outside, you feel like you have no right to complain. And I hope this video gives you a little bit of a permission slip, not necessarily to complain, but to realize that it's okay, right? In fact, it's essential to contact the truth. Unless we touch the dissonance, unless we make contact with the things that don't work for us, we're not going to actually find the courage, the audacity to actually think at a much higher level where it's not just about the money, but we aspire to and develop a vision around building a business that actually feels good to run, that's enjoyable, that's fun, that actually lights our soul on fire, that feels like more like a calling than just something we do for the money, right? And it's okay that you have these thoughts that other people would kill to have this business. You should be grateful. This is what you wanted. Maybe you think you're being dramatic. Maybe you've told yourself that, hey, this is what success feels like. But this is wanting more than just the money, and even wanting more money is not a lack of gratitude. There's an intelligence there, right? It's the part of you that knows that this business is no longer the right expression of who you are. It's not the right representation of who you're becoming. Maybe it was right for a past version of you. It may have been necessary. It may have been the bridge. It got you here, but the bridge is not the destination. And I think one of the most dangerous things we can do is think that the thing that we built from our past is the thing that is our future. And I think we are meant to outgrow things, right? We outgrow situations, we outgrow people. We also outgrow businesses because we're constantly changing, hopefully. And sometimes it's not the smartest thing to do is keep scaling the thing that doesn't feel right anymore, right? A business that doesn't feel like it holds the most powerful, the most expressed, the most tuned in creative part of you, because growth in that sense is only going to create more disconnection, because you literally have to abandon yourself to grow this thing, because your body knows, right? Your body knows when you're selling a thing that is just not something that generates energy for you. And when we as founders don't listen, our body starts creating resistance, procrastination, avoidance. You feel creatively stuck, desire to pivot or burn the whole thing down, resentment, indecision, distraction, fatigue, looking at what everyone else is doing online and playing the comparison game, looking at their models and their offers and being like, oh, maybe I should pivot this way or that way. This is a classic sign that you're building in a way that separates you from source. And when I say source, God, the universe, this infinite intelligence that animates everything, I think the right business for us connects us more to source. And it allows us to access resources that are far beyond our capabilities. It allows us to build the thing, do the thing that God, the universe, whatever your belief system is, wants to create through us. I think that's one of the most intelligent ways we can create. And when a business actually separates us from source, I think it's one of the most painful things that can happen to us. And most business advice, most business mentors online are going to see that, and they're going to treat that resistance that you feel, that dissonance you feel, as something to override, right? Just push through, be disciplined, focus. Like, you have a money block, stop being emotional. Hormozi works 18-hour days, so you should too. Do what works, scale the thing, hire, delegate, automate. But what if there's an intelligence to that? What if scaling the thing that drains you is actually not the smart thing to do, right? What if growing the business in a way that requires you to abandon yourself is one of the worst things you can do for yourself, even if it makes you more money? And I think there's an opportunity here for a deeper conversation, because the standard around how we measure success, I think, should change, because I think the goal isn't just to build a business that makes money. I think the goal is to build a business that creates money in a way that creates more life. I think the goal is to build a business that allows us to feel more connected to God, to our creativity, to the highest version of ourselves, to our most authentic self. That gives us more freedom, more energy, more expression, more spaciousness, more intimacy, more creativity, more power, more contact with the deepest part of us that's here to create something extraordinary. And I think that's what separates a good business from an extraordinary business. Because a good business just makes money. But an extraordinary business makes money in a way that makes the founder more alive. A good business may have clients, but an extraordinary business has clients that the founder is actually lit up to serve. A good business works if the founder keeps feeding it, but an extraordinary business compounds because the founder is more connected to source. They're channeling their signal, they're creating trust, they're building assets, and the architecture of a business, it actually amplifies their most natural, powerful self. A good business gets you paid, but an extraordinary business gets you paid to exist. And I really think that's the difference. I think there's an opportunity for all of us to start asking different questions. And I think it's not just about like, how do I make this thing bigger? How do I grow this thing? Maybe it's a question like, what would this business become if it was designed around amplifying my life force, giving me life force instead of extracting it, instead of requiring me to just spend all my precious energy and capacity trying to make this thing grow? Because most businesses are designed around output, right? It's like, how do we produce more? How do we sell more? How do we serve more? How do we post more? How do we launch more? How do we hire more? How do we deliver more? But you're not an infinite output machine, right? You're the source of the signal. You're the thing that animates the entire structure. And if the business consumes the source, eventually it's going to cannibalize itself. And you see this a lot because people start their businesses with this deep sense of passion. And the longer they stay in the game, the more tired they get, the more burnt out they get, the more exhausted and fatigued they get. I really think it should be the opposite. The bigger the business gets, the more energized, excited, inspired we should feel. And this is really true for anyone selling expertise. If you have a personal brand, if you're a coach, a consultant, you are an advisor, you're a creator. If you have a business that depends on your insight, your point of view, your presence, your creativity, your taste, right? Your aliveness is not separate from the asset. It is the asset, right? Your state is the asset. Your signal is the asset. Your nervous system is the asset. Your calendar is part of the asset. Your enjoyment is part of the asset. Your capacity to think clearly is part of the asset. Your ability to create from truth is part of the asset. And if the business model destroys the assets that it depends on, it's just bad architecture, right? If the business depends on your creativity but gives you no space to create, that's bad architecture. If the business depends on your presence but keeps you depleted, it's bad architecture. If the business relies on your signal, but it rewards you for performing and playing a character online, that's shitty architecture. If it depends on you to think clearly, strategically, but you're weak, your calendar is packed with just low leverage calls and meetings and all these things, and you have no white space, that's bad architecture. If your business depends on a very high level of trust, but the way you acquire clients is through pressure, hammering pain points, putting people in a trauma response, it's bad architecture, right? If your business depends on like really high quality premium delivery, but you attract clients who are not a good fit for that, it's never going to scale to the level that you want it to. And that's why if you have these challenges, it's not a personal problem. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not ungrateful. It's not that you can't handle more success. It's just that you're stuck in an architecture that's not meant for you. It's not aligned to you. It's taking the most valuable parts of you and it's spending it in the least intelligent way. And maybe that's what actually needs to change. It's not you need to work harder, you need to find more willpower or implement another productivity system. Maybe you need to reorganize your business around what actually gives you energy, what actually turns you on. Maybe you need a business architecture that actually amplifies your signal, that allows you to work with people who truly charge you up and fill you up. And maybe that's the redesign. But all of this requires telling the truth, right? And I think most of our issues in life and in business come from avoiding the truth. And one of the things I say a lot to the founders I mentor is anything that can be destroyed by the truth must be. When I've taken myself through this process, I had to ask myself really hard questions like, what part of the business do I not want more of, right? Where am I tired of performing? What clients do I no longer want to attract? What kind of delivery am I secretly resenting? What part of my brand feels like an old identity that isn't true anymore? Where am I making money but losing life force? Where does growth create more pressure instead of creating more freedom? Where is the business still organized around survival even though I'm no longer in survival? And making contact with the truth reveals where we're stuck, because it's usually not a lack of opportunity. It's because we haven't yet given ourselves permission to have outgrown what worked, right? And that permission is huge. You are allowed to outgrow a working business. You're allowed to stop scaling the model that got you paid or got you paid really well. You're allowed to redesign what other people would call successful, what would be their wet dream, but isn't yours anymore. And you're allowed to want more than revenue, right? You're allowed to want freedom. You're allowed to want enjoyment. You're allowed to want better clients. You're allowed to want fewer calls. You're allowed to want higher margins, right? You're allowed to want a business that doesn't require you to keep proving your worth through exhausting yourself. You're allowed to want the extraordinary version of this. And that doesn't make you ungrateful. It really doesn't. This kind of honesty is the beginning of the next chapter of your journey as an entrepreneur. Because once you put the truth on the table, then you can actually rebuild your business around that. You don't need to destroy it. You don't need to burn anything down. I think those things are very knee-jerk reactions. And that happens when someone's been carrying dissonance for too long. But you have built assets that are valuable, right? You have an audience, you build trust, you have proof, you have IP, you have clients that you've delivered results for, you've generated revenue, you have relationships, you have a reputation in the market, you have a body of work, you have a level of intimacy with people, and those assets matter, and you don't have to throw anything away. You can actually reorganize those assets around a signal that's more true to who you are right now, right? And that's the difference between pivoting in a state of panic in a super reactive way and upgrading the architecture of your business in a super intentional way. We don't want to just throw away the old thing because you reach the point of maximum pain. We want to actually extract the assets from the old model and reorganize them around this next chapter, this new level. And for some of you, this is actually refining the category that you play in. It's turning your point of view, your worldview, like the perspective that you have in your market into a sharper position into a new category. For others, it's building a new premium offer. It's something that actually represents what you want to sell and to the people you want to sell it to. And for others, it's incorporating AI and assets to reduce the complexity and simplify things. For some of you, it's redesigning the calendar and how you're working. It doesn't matter what the exact nature of the shift is for you. The point is not that you do this in a mechanical way, right? You do this in a way that gets you to the more sort of logical, rational, hey, I simplify things, I made things more efficient, I have more leverage here, I improve my unit economics, I improve my LTV. I think we have to incorporate some things that we're not used to prioritizing as entrepreneurs, which is, I think of it like a full body upgrade, right? It makes sense to your head, but does it also make sense in your heart? Does this generate the feelings that you want to feel as you run this thing? Does it make sense in your gut? At an intuitive level, does this business feel like the right business for you? And then does it make sense in your balls or whatever the lady version is, right? Do you feel turned on by this thing? Because I think we can build two kinds of businesses. We can build a parasitic business, which is what most people build, which is a business that extracts your life force to produce money. Or we can create a regenerative business that creates money in a way that generates more life force. And the difference is that a parasitic business grows, but it makes the founder shrink because it's literally draining you. With a regenerative business, the more the business grows, the more you expand, right? And parasitic businesses generally require more force over time. They need more energy to keep the thing running. In a regenerative business, it takes less force over time because it's generating way more energy than it takes. Understanding this difference is really key, right? And if you're a 6, 7, or even 8-figure founder and you find yourself resonating with some of the things that I talked about in this video, then this is probably the thing that you're actually craving, right? Not just more revenue, but you want a business that's truly regenerative. You want a business that creates wealth, yes, but also more aliveness. You want a business that makes more money as it becomes more you. You want a business that makes your calendar feel more spacious as it grows. You want a business that allows you to transmit the thing that you're here to do and turn that signal into assets. And you want a business that doesn't require you to abandon your body, your family, your creativity, or God to operate it. In fact, it brings you closer to all those things. This is what it takes, I think, to design an extraordinary business that lets you have an extraordinary life. And what it's going to take from us, though, is operating from a different orientation, which is most people, they start with scale, which is, how do I grow this thing? What do I need to do? But I think there's a more intelligent way to do this. So the sequence that I came up with for myself and for a lot of the people that I've been advising is source, signal, structure, scale, right? Source is the deeper design. This is our connection to God, our connection to the universe, the recognition that we were put on this planet for a purpose, that we came in with a certain blueprint. What are you actually here to do? What's the work that gives you the most energy? What's the problem that you see that others miss? What's the future that you're here to create? What's the truth that's trying to come through you? That's source. And we only access those things when we connect to the vast infinite intelligence that makes the trees grow and all the beautiful things that exist on this planet. When we connect to that, what we naturally express is what I call our signal, right? So our signal is the expression of that source flowing through us. So that's your message. That's your point of view. That's your body of work. That's your category. That's your standards. That's your worldview. And I think that's the best origin point for a brand. And it's the only way to build a brand that is truly unique, what I call a singularity brand. And until you build a brand around your uniqueness, you'll always be stuck in competition. You won't be playing your game, right? You'll be always playing someone else's game. So when you're connected to source and you find your signal and you're broadcasting your signal, then you want the right structure. So structure is the business architecture that actually carries the signal, that amplifies the signal. And this could be your offers, your pricing, your delivery, your acquisition, right? Your buyer journey, your revenue model, your team. And all of these things allow you to actually deliver value, but deliver value in a way that feels right for you. And then when we do these things right, when you're connected to source, you're broadcasting the right signal, and you have the right structure, scale is the natural result of that. Scale is what happens when the signal moves through the structure and reaches the market. And a lot of entrepreneurs, they start at scale. And unfortunately, that's why they amplify the dissonance, right? They ask how to grow before asking what's the right thing to grow. They ask how to add before they actually remove the things that are not right. They ask how to sell more before asking whether the offer is actually the right commercial expression of their signal, right? And that's backwards. We want to actually retune ourselves first and then build around that. So this is the way to actually play the game right, I think. And when we do this right, we actually operate and access a state of sovereignty, which is we're not living in this codependent relationship with the business, with money, with clients, with an audience. We're not playing this game because we want to get something, right? We feel complete and at ease and at peace. And the game we're playing is the game we're playing. We're playing to play. And success without sovereignty never feels like enough, right? Success without aliveness will never feel satisfying. Success without spaciousness will never create ease. Success without truth will never feel real. Success without a model that actually matches this next chapter of your journey will never feel right. And so I think it's time for all of us to stop living inside a version of success that's expired. And that's the work I've been doing with founders inside the accelerator. And the game we're playing is not the game of adding more to the business, adding more, making the machine bigger and making it spin faster, and definitely not pushing harder or just trying to scale the thing. It's the game of how do we take our expertise, how do we take this thing that we were put on this planet to do, and how do we turn that into an extraordinary expression of our gifts? How do we generate profit while feeling connected to our purpose, while doing it in a state of play, right? How do we build the right systems to actually amplify our deepest expression? And this requires us to find the signal, isolate the signal that's underneath the business, right? The model that's underneath the money, the life that's underneath the strategy, because our goal is not just more revenue. The goal is a business that creates more profit, more freedom, better clients, fewer moving parts and fewer complexity, and more aliveness at the same time. And that is paid to exist. And paid to exist is not paid to do nothing, right? We're paid because our state becomes the source of economic value. Our signal becomes the product, and our structure becomes the amplifier, because we get paid because we've aligned all these things. Because when we build a business around who we actually are, and we use the right structure to express that and generate value, then it takes away all the ceilings. We get paid way more because we're actually enjoying the way that we get paid. And we're paid because the business isn't built around an old identity that we're playing. We're transmitting who we actually are. And I think this is the future of expertise business, right? If any of this resonated, definitely check out the Paid to Exist case study. It's basically a case study of how I helped one of my clients build a Paid to Exist business that now does anywhere between $250K to $300K a month. We 5x the business in 18 months. And everything that I shared with you today is actually how we did that. So check that out if it sounds interesting, because this is not just a way for us to build a business that feels really good. I think it's also the way for us to generate the most profit as we possibly can, because when we build a business around what turns us on, what lights us up, what actually feels most fun to do, that also is the business that generates the most profit. So the case study is actually going to show you what the business looks like when a founder operates in this way, stops settling for the good enough version, decides to build the extraordinary. And if that resonates, then we can always chat. But I hope you take this from this whole video, if you're still here, that you don't have to spend the next decade of your life trapped inside a business that all these people on the outside admire, but doesn't actually work for you. You don't have to settle for just revenue, right? And you don't have to settle for making money in a way that doesn't feel right for you. And you don't have to settle for a good business. And you can actually build the one that you're here to build. And you can still be grateful for what got you here and still refuse to scale it, right? You can make really good money and decide that the way you're making it doesn't work for you, and acknowledging that might be the beginning of your next level. So I hope this resonated. I hope you got a sense of permission, and I'll see you in the next one.